Turntable needles are another example. They are produced almost exclusively in Japan, where you can find the last remaining people who know how to use the machinery required to make these precision needles, and who are trying to pass on their knowledge to their descendants. We met a Takumi on a visit to Komano, a small town near Hiroshima. We were there for the day working on a photo essay for one of the most famous brands of makeup brushes in the West. The billboard welcoming visitors to Komano shows a mascot holding a large brush. In addition to the brush factories, the town is full of little houses and vegetable gardens. Heading farther in, you can see several Shinto shrines at the base of the mountains that surround the town. We spent hours taking photos in factories full of people in orderly rows, each doing a single task, such as painting the handles of the brushes or loading boxes of them onto trucks. Before we realized, we still hadn't seen anyone actually putting bristles into the brush heads. After we asked about this and got the runaround several times, the president of one company agreed to show us how it was done. He led us out of the building and asked us to get into his car. After a 5-minute drive, we parked next to another, smaller structure and climbed the stairs. He opened a door and we walked into a small room filled with windows that let in lovely natural light. In the middle of the room was a woman wearing a mask. You could see only her eyes. She was so focused on choosing individual bristles for the brushes, gracefully moving her hands and fingers, using scissors and combs to sort the bristles, that she didn't even notice our presence. Her movements were so quick it was hard to tell what she was doing. The president of the company interrupted her to let her know that we would be taking photos as she worked. We couldn't see her mouth, but the glint in her eye and the cheerful inflection in her speech let us know that she was smiling. She looked happy and proud talking about her work and responsibilities. We had to use extremely fast shutter speeds to capture her movements. Her hands danced and flowed in concert with her tools and the bristles she was sorting. The president told us that this Takumi was one of the most important people in the company, even though she was hidden away in a separate building. Every bristle of every brush the company made passed through her hands. Steve Jobs in Japan. Apple co-founder Steve Jobs was a big fan of Japan. Not only did he visit the Sony factories in the 1980s and adopt many of their methods when he founded Apple, he was also captivated by the simplicity and quality of Japanese porcelain in Kyoto. It was not, however, an artisan from Kyoto who won Steve Jobs' devotion, but rather a Takumi from Toyama named Yukio Shakunaga who used a technique called Ichun Isetoyaki, known by only a few. On a visit to Kyoto, Jobs heard of an exhibition of Shakunaga's work. He immediately understood that there was something special about Shakunaga's porcelain. As a matter of fact, he bought several cups, vases, and plates and went back to the show 3 times that week. Jobs returned to Kyoto several times over the course of his life in search of inspiration, and ended up meeting Shakunaga in person. It is said that Jobs had many questions for him, almost all of them about the fabrication process and the type of porcelain he used. Shakunaga explained that he used white porcelain he extracted himself from mountains in the Toyama prefecture, making him the only artist of his ilk familiar with the fabrication process of porcelain objects from their origins in the mountains to their final form, an authentic Takumi. Jobs was so impressed that he considered going to Toyama to see the mountain where Shakunaga got his porcelain, but thought better of it when he heard that it was more than 4 hours by train from Kyoto. In an interview after Jobs' death, Shakunaga said he was very proud that his work had been appreciated by the man who created the iPhone. He added that Jobs' last purchase from him had been a set of 12 teacups. Jobs had asked for something special, a new style. To satisfy this request, Shakunaga made 150 teacups in the process of testing out new ideas. Of these, he chose the 12 best and sent them to the Jobs family. Ever since his first trip to Japan, Jobs was fascinated and inspired by the country's artisans, engineers, especially at Sony, philosophy, especially Zen, and cuisine, especially sushi. Sophisticated simplicity. What do Japanese artisans, engineers, Zen philosophy, and cuisine have in common? Simplicity and attention to detail. It is not a lazy simplicity but a sophisticated one that searches at new frontiers, always taking the object, the body and mind or the cuisine to the next level according to one's Ikigai. As Csikszentmihalyi would say, the key is always having a meaningful challenge to overcome in order to maintain flow. The documentary Zero Dreams of Sushi gives us another example of a Takumi, this time in the kitchen. His protagonist has been making sushi every day for more than 80 years and owns a small sushi restaurant near the Ginza subway station in Tokyo. He and his son go every day to the famous Tsukiji fish market and choose the best fish to bring back to the restaurant. In his documentary, we see one of Zero's apprentices learning to make tamago, a thin, slightly sweet omelette. No matter how hard he tries, he can't get Zero's approval. He keeps practicing for years until he finally does. Why does the apprentice refuse to give up? Doesn't he get bored cooking eggs every day? No, because making sushi is his Ikigai too. Both Zero and his son are culinary artists. They don't get bored when they cook. They achieve a state of flow. They enjoy themselves completely when they are in the kitchen. That is their happiness, their Ikigai. They have learned to take pleasure in their work, to lose their sense of time. Beyond the close relationship between father and son, which helps them keep the challenge going each day, they also work in a quiet, peaceful environment that allows them to concentrate. Even after receiving a 3-star rating from Michelin, they never considered opening other locations or expanding the business. They serve just 10 patrons at a time at the bar of their small restaurant. Zero's family isn't looking to make money. Instead, they value good working conditions and creating an environment in which they can flow while making the best sushi in the world. Zero, like Yukio Shakunaga, begins his work at the source. He goes to the fish market to find the best tuna. Shakunaga goes to the mountains to find the best porcelain. When they get down to work, both become one with the object they are creating. This unity with the object that they reach in a state of flow takes on special meaning in Japan, where, according to Shintoism, forests, trees, and objects have a kami, spirit or god within them. When someone, whether an artist, an engineer, or a chef, sets out to create something, his or her responsibility is to use nature to give it life, while respecting that nature at every moment. During this process, the artisan becomes one with the object and flows with it. An iron worker would say that metal has a life of its own, just as someone making ceramics would say that the clay does. The Japanese are skilled at bringing nature and technology together, not man versus nature, but rather a union of the two. The purity of Ghibli. There are those who say that the Shinto value of being connected with nature is vanishing. One of the harshest critics of this loss is another artist with a clearly defined Ikigai, Hayao Miyazaki, the director of the animated films produced by Studio Ghibli. In nearly all his films, we see humans, technology, fantasy, and nature in a state of conflict, and in the end, coming together. One of the most poignant metaphors in his film Spirited Away is an obese spirit covered in trash that represents the pollution of the rivers. In Miyazaki's films, forests have personalities, trees have feelings, and robots befriend birds. Considered a national treasure by the Japanese government, Miyazaki is an artist capable of becoming completely absorbed in his art. He uses a cell phone from the late 1990s and he makes his entire team draw by hand. He directs his film by rendering on paper even the tiniest detail, achieving flow by drawing, not by using a computer. Thanks to this obsession on the director's part, Studio Ghibli is one of the only studios in the world where almost the entire production process is carried out using traditional techniques. Those who have visited Studio Ghibli know that it is fairly typical on a given Sunday to see a solitary individual tucked away in a corner, hard at work, a man in simple clothes who will greet them with an "Ohayo," hello, without looking up. Miyazaki is so passionate about his work that he spends many Sundays in the studio, enjoying the state of flow, putting his Ikigai above all else. Visitors know that under no circumstances is one to bother Miyazaki, who is known for his quick temper, especially if he is interrupted while drawing. In 2013, Miyazaki announced he was going to retire. To commemorate his retirement, the television station NHK made a documentary showing him in his last days at work. He is drawing in nearly every scene of the film. In one scene, several of his colleagues are seen coming out of a meeting, and there he is drawing in a corner, paying no attention to them. In another scene, he is shown walking to work on December 30, a national holiday in Japan, and opening the doors of Studio Ghibli so he can spend the day there, drawing alone. Miyazaki can't stop drawing. The day after his retirement, instead of going on vacation or staying at home, he went to Studio Ghibli and sat down to draw. His colleagues put on their best poker faces, not knowing what to say. 1 year later, he announced he wouldn't make any more feature films, but that he would keep on drawing until the day he died. Can someone really retire if he is so passionate about what he does? The recluses. It is not only the Japanese who have this capacity. There are artists and scientists all over the world with strong, clear ikigais. They do what they love until their dying day. The last thing Einstein wrote before closing his eyes forever was a formula that attempted to unite all the forces of the universe in a single theory. When he died, he was still doing what he loved. If he hadn't been a physicist, he said, he would have been happy as a musician. When he wasn't focused on physics or mathematics, he enjoyed playing the violin. Reaching a state of flow while working on his formulas or playing music, his two ikigais brought him endless pleasure. Many such artists might seem misanthropic or reclusive, but what they are really doing is protecting the time that brings them happiness, sometimes at the expense of other aspects of their lives. They are outliners who apply the principles of flow to their lives to an extreme. Another example of this kind of artist is the novelist Haruki Murakami. He sees only a close circle of friends and appears in public in Japan only once every few years. Artists know how important it is to protect their space, control their environment, and be free of distractions if they want to flow with their ikigai. Microflow, enjoying mundane tasks. But what happens when we have to, say, do the laundry, mow the lawn, or attend to paperwork? Is there a way to make these mundane tasks enjoyable? Near the Shinjuku subway station in one of the neural centers of Tokyo, there is a supermarket that still employs elevator operators. The elevators are fairly standard and could easily be operated by the customers, but the store prefers to provide the service of someone holding the door open for you, pushing the button for your floor, and bowing as you exit. If you ask around, you'll learn that there is one elevator operator who has been doing the same job since 2004. She is always smiling and enthusiastic about her work. How is she able to enjoy such a job? Doesn't she get bored doing something so repetitive? On closer inspection, it becomes clear that the elevator operator is not just pushing buttons, but is instead performing a whole sequence of movements. She begins by greeting the customer with a song-like salutation, followed by a bow and a welcoming wave of the hand. Then she presses the elevator button with a graceful movement, as though she is a geisha offering a client a cup of tea. Csikszentmihalyi calls this microflow. We have all been bored in a class or at a conference and started doodling to keep ourselves entertained, or whistled while painting a wall. If we are not truly being challenged, we get bored and add a layer of complexity to amuse ourselves. Our ability to turn routine tasks into moments of microflow, into something we enjoy, is key to our being happy, since we all have to do such tasks. Even Bill Gates washes the dishes every night. He says he enjoys it, that it helps him relax and clear his mind, and that he tries to do it a little better each day, following an established order or set of rules he has made for himself. Place first, fork second, and so on. It's one of his daily moments of microflow. Richard Feynman, one of the most important physicists of all time, also took pleasure in routine tasks. W. Daniel Hillis, one of the founders of the supercomputer manufacturer Thinking Machines, hired Feynman to work on the development of a computer that could handle parallel processing when he was already world famous. He says Feynman showed up on his first day on work and said, "Okay, boss, what's my assignment?" They didn't have anything prepared, so they asked him to work on a certain mathematical problem. He immediately realized they were giving him an irrelevant task to keep him busy and said, "That sounds like a bunch of baloney. Give me something real to do." So they sent him to a nearby shop to buy office supplies, and he completed his assignment with a smile on his face. When he didn't have something important to do or needed to rest his mind, Feynman dedicated himself to microflowing, say painting the office walls. Weeks later, after visiting the Thinking Machines offices, a group of investors declared, "You have a Nobel laureate in their painting walls and soldering circuits." Instant vacations. Getting there through meditation. Training the mind can get us to a place of flow more quickly. Meditation is one way to exercise our mental muscles. There are many types of meditation, but they all have the same objective: calming the mind, observing our thoughts and emotions, and centering our focus on a single object. The basic practice involves sitting with a straight back and focusing on your breath. Anyone can do it, and you feel a difference after just one session. By fixing your attention on the air moving in and out of your nose, you can slow the torrent of thoughts and clear your mental horizons. The Archer's Secret. The winner of the 1988 Olympic gold medal for archery was a 17-year-old woman from South Korea. When asked how she prepared, she replied that the most important part of her training was meditating for 2 hours each day. If we want to get better at reaching a state of flow, meditation is an excellent antidote to our smartphones and their notifications constantly clamoring for our attention. One of the most common mistakes among people starting to meditate is worrying about doing it right, achieving absolute mental silence, or reaching nirvana. The most important thing is to focus on the journey. Since the mind is a constant swirl of thoughts, ideas, and emotions, slowing down the centrifuge even for just a few seconds can help us feel more rested and leave us with a sense of clarity. In fact, one of the things we learn in the practice of meditation is not to worry about anything that flits across our mental screen. The idea of killing our boss might flash into our mind, but we simply label it as a thought and let it pass like a cloud, without judging or rejecting it. It is only a thought, one of the 60,000 we have every day, according to some experts. Meditation generates alpha and theta brainwaves. For those experienced in meditation, these waves appear right away, while it might take a half hour for a beginner to experience them. These relaxing brainwaves are the ones that are activated right before we fall asleep, as we lie in the sun, or right after taking a hot bath. We all carry a spa with us everywhere we go. It's just a matter of knowing how to get in, something anyone can do, with a bit of practice. Humans as ritualistic beings. Life is inherently ritualistic. We could argue that humans naturally follow rituals that keep us busy. In some modern cultures, we have been forced out of our ritualistic lives to pursue goal after goal in order to be seen as successful. But throughout history, humans have always been busy. We were hunting, cooking, farming, exploring, and raising families, activities that were structured as rituals to keep us busy throughout our days. But in an unusual way, rituals still permeate daily life and business practices in modern Japan. The main religions in Japan, Confucianism, Buddhism, and Shintoism, are all ones in which the rituals are more important than absolute rules. When doing business in Japan, process, manners, and how you work on something is more important than the final results. Whether this is good or bad for the economy is beyond the scope of this book. What is indisputable, though, is that finding flow in a ritualistic workplace is much easier than in one in which we are continually stressed out, trying to achieve unclear goals set by our bosses. Rituals give us clear rules and objectives, which help us enter a state of flow. When we have only a big goal in front of us, we might feel lost or overwhelmed by it. Rituals help us by giving us the process, the sub-steps on the path to achieving a goal. When confronted with a big goal, try to break it down into parts and then attack each part one by one. Focus on enjoying your daily rituals, using them as tools to enter a state of flow. Don't worry about the outcome, it will come naturally. Happiness is in the doing, not in the result. As a rule of thumb, remind yourself, rituals over goals. The happiest people are not the ones who achieve the most. They are the ones who spend more time than others in a state of flow. Using flow to find your Ikigai. After reading this chapter, you should have a better idea of which activities in your life make you enter flow. Write all of them on a piece of paper, then ask yourself these questions. What do the activities that drive you to flow have in common? Why do those activities drive you to flow? For example, are all the activities you most like doing ones that you practice alone or with other people? Do you flow more when doing things that require you to move your body or just to think? In the answers to these questions, you might find the underlying Ikigai that drives your life. If you don't, then keep searching by going deeper into what you like by spending more of your time in the activities that make you flow. Also, try new things that are not on the list of what makes you flow, but that are similar and that you are curious about. For example, if photography is something that drives you into flow, you could also try painting. You might even like it more. Or if you love snowboarding and have never tried surfing. Flow is mysterious. It is like a muscle. The more you train it, the more you will flow, and the closer you will be to your Ikigai.